Erev Shabbat Shalom Rabotai. We are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Nazir. We are up to Perek Hey Mishnah Bet. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elui Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Ranbai V'Eliyahu ben Burcha Yisraelov Chana bad Miriam ben Sason ben Raya Menuchatam began Eden Amen Le'avdil ben Chaim Le'chaim V'derefua Shelemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa B'tor Shah Cholei Yisrael. The Mishnah now discusses two more cases in which Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel have the same disagreement regarding a consecration based on a mistake, if it is still a consecration or not. The Mishnah begins, Dinar Zav She'aleh Biadi Rishon Areu Hekdesh. If someone was about to reach into some coins and said, the gold dinar that comes up in my hand first shall be consecrated to the temple. So here too we assume that he wants to consecrate the first coin he picks up, but he thinks that it will be a gold dinar. Therefore, his declaration is effective according to Bet Shammai, even if a silver one comes up first. So the Mishnah says, Va'ala shel kesef, and a silver dinar came up instead. Bet Shammai and Bet Shammai say, Hekdesh, the silver dinar is consecrated even though he made a mistake. Bet Hillel say, and Hekdesh, it is not consecrated because he made a mistake. Chavit shel yain shetaleh biyadi rishona rei Hekdesh. If someone was about to reach into a group of barrels and remove one, and he said, the barrel of wine that comes up in my hand first shall be consecrated to the temple, here too we assume that he wants to consecrate the first barrel he picks up, but he thinks that it will contain wine. Valta shel shemen, but when he removed one, a barrel of oil came up instead. Bet Shammai and Bet Shammai say, Hekdesh, the barrel of oil is consecrated even though he made a mistake. Bet Hillel says, Eno Hekdesh, it is not consecrated because he made a mistake. Now, this Mishnah and the previous one give three examples of the dispute between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. The first one, concerning an ox, is a case of consecrating an animal for an offering on the altar. We see from this case that even when consecrating something to the altar, the highest level of holiness, Bet Hillel say that the consecration does not take effect if it involves a mistake. The second case concerning coins is a donation to the temple treasury. We learn from this case that even when consecrating coins to the temple treasury, which is a lesser level of holiness, Bet Shammai hold that the consecration takes effect even by mistake. The third case, wine and oil, teaches us that even though the two substances are completely different and are not used for similar purposes, Bet Shammai nevertheless consider the mistaken consecration to be effective. And that is the end of Mishnah Bet. Mishnah Gimel now teaches a law about Nazirut that Bet Hillel used as a proof against Bet Shammai in their previous dispute. Mishnadar ben Nazir. If someone vowed to be a Nazir, but later decided that he had not made the vow correctly, meaning after making the vow, he decided that the expression he had used was not correct for a vow of Nazirut, so that vow never took effect. And then thinking that he had not become a Nazir, he drank wine, but he then asked the sage, and the sage ruled that his vow of Nazirut was actually binding, and he was forbidden to drink wine. This person counts as Nazirut starting from the time he made the vow, and even the days on which he drank wine count toward his term, since at the time he drank the wine, he did not realize he was a Nazir. Meaning this is true, even though he should not have drunk wine without first asking if he was a Nazir. However, if a person who knew that he was a Nazir drank wine, he does not count the days on which he drank wine toward his Nazirut. This is a rabbinic penalty for violating his Nazirut, as the Gemara says in Masechet Nazir, page 32a. For example, if he vowed to be a Nazir for 30 days and he drank wine on 5 of them, he must be a Nazir for 5 more days after the 30 days are finished, before we allow him to bring his concluding offerings. In Mishnah 5, we'll discuss someone who violates his Nazirut by cutting his hair. But the Mishnah says, if he asked a sage and the sage released him from the vow because he ruled that the vow was indeed not made properly and never took effect, but before asking the sage he had assumed that he was a Nazir, and he had already set aside consecrated animals to be brought for his concluding offerings, these animals can go out and graze with the rest of the flock. Since he consecrated them only because he mistakenly thought he was a Nazir, they did not become holy. Now the law we just learned is accepted by everyone. Bet Hillel now used this law to challenge Bet Shammai's position in the previous two Mishnayot. Amru Bet Hillel Bet Shammai. Bet Hillel said to Bet Shammai, Im atem modim bazeh shu hekdesh ta'ut. Do you not agree in this case Right? Do you not agree in this case that it is a consecration based on a mistake, since the person consecrated the animals only because he thought he was a Nazir? And yet the law is that the animals go out and graze with the rest of the flock because their consecration did not take effect. This shows that when a person consecrates something based on a mistake, it does not become holy. Now, instead of responding to Bet Hillel's question, Bet Shammai bring proof to their own position from the law of Maaser Bema, the animal tithe. Now, Bet Shammai disregard Bet Hillel's challenge because they hold that the reason the animals did not become consecrated in this case has nothing to do with their having been consecrated by mistake. Rather, the reason they're not consecrated is that the person who consecrated them was never a Nazir. He therefore could not consecrate the animals as Nazir offerings, since these can be consecrated only for an obligation that exists, and he had no such obligation. This has nothing to do with it being based on a mistake. However, Mishnayot 1 and 2 deal with someone who consecrates an animal as a voluntary offering or donates an object to the temple, which a person can do at any time. Therefore, even if he consecrates it based on a mistake, Bet Shammai ruled that it takes effect. But again, Bet Shammai bring a proof to their own position from the law of the animal tithe. Every year a person must set aside 1/10 of all the animals born in his flock or herd that year and bring them as offerings in the temple. This is a verse in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 27, verse 32. This obligation applies only to kosher species that can be offered on the altar, like cattle, sheep, and goats. Now, this is done in the following manner. The animals born that year are gathered into a pen with a narrow entrance. The door to the pen is open and the animals are let out one by one. As they pass through the entrance, the owner counts them. When the 10th one passes through, the owner taps it with the stick that has red paint on it and says, "This is the 10th," as the Mishnah says in Bechorot, chapter 9, Mishnah 7. This sanctifies that animal as an offering. He then counts the next 10, continuing until all the animals have passed through. Now, the law is that if the person counted wrong and called the 9th animal the 10th or the 11th animal the 10th, that animal becomes consecrated as well. Bet Shammai now used this law to prove their view that a consecration can take effect even when it is based on a mistake. Amru lahen Bet Shammai said to Bet Hillel, I atem modim, do you not agree b'misheta v'kra l'tishi asiri v'la'asiri tishi ul'achad asar asiri, that when someone made a mistake and called the 9th animal the 10th, and then when the 10th animal passed through, he realized that he had counted wrong and called the 10th animal the 9th, and then when the 11th animal passed through, he called the 11th animal the 10th, meaning realizing he had forgotten to count the 9th, he tried to fix his mistake by starting again from 9, calling the 10th animal the 9th, and then the next animal the 10th. Shuekdish, that the 9th and 11th animals are also consecrated, even though he called them the 10th by mistake. Now, the Gemara in Bechod, page 20b, learns from a biblical verse that if the 9th and 11th animals are mistakenly declared the 10th, they too become consecrated. The 10th animal to come out is surely consecrated because it was the 10th, as the Mishnah says in Bechod, chapter 9, Mishnah 8. Now, since the Torah says that they are consecrated, we see that an offering can become consecrated even by mistake. Now, Bet Hillel responded, this is clearly an exception to the rule and cannot be used as proof. Amru lahem Bet Hillel. Bet Hillel said to them, Lo, no, this is not a proof. Hashevet kiddusho. Is it the stick that consecrates these animals? Meaning, is it really true that these animals are consecrated simply because he mistakenly tapped them with the stick and called them the 10th? What would happen if he made a mistake and placed a stick on the 8th animal or the 12th animal and called it the 10th? Shema sachlum. Would he have done anything? Certainly not. The Torah says only that the 9th and 11th animals can become consecrated, not any other ones. So this shows then that Bet Shammai are incorrect, and the reason the 9th and 11th animals are holy is not that any animal can be consecrated by mistake. If Bet Shammai were correct, and the reason the 9th and 11th animals are consecrated because any consecration takes effect by mistake, then if he mistakenly called the 8th and 12th animals the 10th, they should also become consecrated. The fact that they do not become consecrated shows that there is a different reason why the 9th and 11th animals become holy, as Bet Hillel will now explain. Ela katuv rather, it is that the same verse that consecrated the 10th animal also consecrated the 9th and 11th animals. Right? Ela katuv, the verse, the verse, the same verse that consecrated the 10th animal also consecrated the 9th and 11th animals if they were mistakenly declared the 10th. since it's a special decree that applies only to these animals, it cannot be applied to any other cases of consecrations made by mistake. In ordinary cases, things do not become consecrated based on a mistake. And that is on Abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Everybody should have a Shavua Tov. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.